What is going down, faithful? We are back for a State of the Franchise episode to discuss training camp looming around the corner. I mean, it's the hottest ticket in town, Jason. You'll be lucky to get a training camp ticket out there. We'll talk about training camp, Madden, Kyle Shanahan's the Play Callers podcast. We got all kinds of stuff to talk about. And of course, training camp coming up right after this. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now. Jason Aponte, it is that time of the year again. Are you ready to descend upon California for 49ers training camp?
Happy to just hang out with my guy Brad, Jordan, see my people, Brian Peacock, Eric Crocker. Just a fun time. Hang out with the 49er fans, just be in Cali, catch a vibe and everything, go to a Yard House, catch a vibe with my boys.
Definitely got to go to Yard House.
Yeah, I mean, you already know that's the move. But yeah, like it's just football's actually here, and we have things to speak about, and I can't wait to see Jason's report on Moody. Seems to be a popular sentiment. I've been getting a lot of that on Instagram as well too. Can't wait to see what you're about to say at camp. But he has to beat out number 10, and number 10 is not easy to beat out in any sort of competition. Jordan Elliott Sports says get noticed at grocery stores, signed autographs for fans. None of that ever happened. Jordan Elliott is a liar.
Jordan Elliott, we got a legend in the chat. But yes, I cannot wait to link with all the gang again at training camp and do what we do out here. And of course, we're definitely looking forward to Jason Aponte's kicker critiques, observations. And of course, he's not talking about Jimmy Garoppolo 10. He's talking about Zane Gonzalez, number 10, the biggest battle heading into training camp. I know we're on the edge of our seats to see what Jason has to say about all this stuff. But, man, it's going to be a good time. I can't wait to be able to get in there. I mean, basically, we'll be lucky if you get in there at this point, because I think we've heard now from season ticket holders who had pre-sale advantages on Thursday and regular fans today where tickets were opened for training camp. I mean, we've known training camp has always been a high priority item for your diehard 49er fans, of course, whether locally or whether people fly in for it. I mean, it's at this point, man, like training camp with all the talk all off season, like we're hyped. We're like training camp for diehard fans that's when our season starts at training camp. And if you have an opportunity to get to camp, you get to see these players early. You get to see position battles play out. We got to see last year Jordan Mason ascend the depth charts right.
Called that one. We called that one. He was making a 53.
Guys rising. You can see them dropping. So like, for diehard fans, man, if you can get your butt in those seats, it's a great experience. So no surprise that tickets went fast. They went fast. They're fast and furious. They're gone. If you weren't ready, even if you were ready, you had a hard time getting tickets. It was quite the experience. I'll say so myself.
Yeah. The whole training camp thing is a little bit of a twofold thing. One, 49er fans are super excited to watch a camp battle, and after the way last season ended, so many are frothing at the mouth in terms of trying to get back to watching football and how the 49ers ended their season. But, Brad, let's just keep it a buck, man. The content creators are descending on training camp. And I also just want to say, no matter what, man, like I'm glad that you guys did it because we did it before. And now, like, you guys want to make content off it, and that makes sense. So, like, at this point, I guess I'm saying what I'm saying is you're welcome.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
The positive thing about it is like we were in there, obviously at the beginning of it all. So we got some really awesome access. Like whether it's going back to the combine, some of the things that we did at the combine when they first allowed media before they technically allowed media access and all that type of stuff. It was like that weird in between. Some of the things we got to do there, and of course, being able to you were able to go to joint practices in San Diego for the Chargers 49ers joint practices. Last year, I went to Minnesota for Vikings 49ers joint practices. I imagine this year we're going to see a ton of people out at joint practices, 49ers versus Raiders. So it's definitely a situation where it's like, man, it's hard to get in now,
Mhm.
but we had some good times, man. We really did, and that's you can't take away those moments from us because it was just such a good time, man.
And again, I'm not saying it to like be like, oh, like you're following or anything like that. It's just it's good to see people understanding that we can take care of the content. We can be the guys who are opinionated. We have eyes on the same things that other people see because so many people rely on people who are media or whatever. And unfortunately, some of those people have biases going on, like they have, certain things going on in terms of how they want to put stuff together. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's good to know that people understand that we can start to shift the way sports has been covered, especially the 49ers. If you just show a little bit of aggression and try to take things, and I know it's not easy for everybody, but yeah, man, I'm gonna die on this hill, man. We started this. We were like one like the first few people that pulled up. We're content creators. We covered camp, and then other people noticed that that's something that you can do. That's great. I love that, and I do think that everybody has a different perspective, and that's what makes it beautiful. Is that everybody will have a different opinion, one way or another. One person's gonna say Trey Lance went 1 for 11. Another person's gonna say that Trey Lance went 12 for 12, and you're just gonna have to pick and choose who you believe.
Yeah, obviously, quarterback's going to be a big draw for fans, content creators, media. It doesn't really matter. Talking about the 49ers quarterback during training camp will get you your impressions that you're looking for. I'm excited about getting my eyes on those big uglies up front. I'm excited about
Oh.
seeing some of the rookies. I'm excited about seeing second and third year players ascending, the guys fighting for roster spots. This is going to be one of the most competitive training camps that you and I have ever seen because at every spot there's competition. Starting at quarterback, of course, and we don't need to go into crazy detail there, but
You want to talk about
everywhere.
quarterback, Brad?
Maybe
Mm,
later. We'll see.
mm, mm.
But as you know, there's comp. Does can we even say Kyle Juszczyk has competition? Probably not. But Jack Colletto's coming in. We got another
Hold
fullback in the building. So hey,
on.
there's another fullback. You never know.
Hold
But
on.
we got kicker competitions. We've got guys vying for the tight end position. We've got linebacker 3. Who's it going to be? There's a lot of fun storylines.
No,
It's going to be a good train. This is going to be a good training camp.
there is. And Sean says, "Are you doing the annual teach Jason Aponte alignment technique and almost throw him through the window?" That is a Mobile, Alabama story, and
Oh,
I'm
there's
so glad that you guys
yeah.
understand that because that's literally the first day that I ever met Brad Graham face to face, and that's when our bromance started right then that day.
Yeah, I had to pull out the good old push pull technique,
But
and
you asked me to you're
you're
like, all
light,
right, try to
like,
try to get
I'm
by
not
me.
gonna lie, you're 6'5", you got a pretty solid frame. I was like, man, I was like, lean into me. You're like, I am.
I'm trying. What the hell?
But
I did want to say this though too. About the people that are asking about the joint practices in Vegas. As of right now, it doesn't really feel like that's going to be an open practice at this point.
oh
So
really?
Jim's asking, Jordan, who covered the Pro Bowl, the facility is like in the middle of nowhere in Vegas. So it's not like it's something that's close. And those practices are going to start at 7 a.m. because that's the only time that it's bearable in August for them to have
Oh,
practice outside in Nevada. So I don't know yet. And I've been looking it up, and I don't think that that's going to be available to people in the way that the Chargers one was, the Minnesota Vikings were. So as of right now, I would say TBD. Like I don't know like how that
That's fair.
works, but my whole idea was sticking out in the Bay and then traveling with you fine gentlemen over to Vegas in a four passenger car, and trying to get over there. But it may be off or not if they're not going to open up the practices. So I would just say keep an eye on it.
I mean, if it starts at 7, that's going to be tough. But
7 a.m.
we'll be
Well,
there.
7 a.m. for you is 10 a.m. for me, and I'm usually up way earlier than you
That's
guys are.
true.
So, but yeah, I mean, look,
But it is
if
in Vegas too. That throws
it
another wrench into the
and you
mix.
never sleep in Vegas, so that's the thing. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I got that across because that's what I've been kind of
Yeah,
researching
it's a
and
good
looking
point.
myself is just whether that's going to be open, and it's not exactly the same that it's been in past years with other teams, and maybe it's just something that the Raiders are doing themselves. So they're just trying to keep us from Jimmy Garoppolo, like, and I want to see you, bud. Like I miss you so much, man. I want to see you in the black and gold and the
Jimmy
black and
G.
silver, Jimmy G, man. Like
Did you
I
see the
miss you.
report today that they were talking about like if the foot doesn't heal and he isn't able to play for them, they might just full on tank for what's his name,
Caleb,
Caleb Williams with Josh Jacobs not signing the
and he's not going to camp. He's
he's
not
not
going to
going
camp.
to camp.
Not him or
He's he
Barkley
was
are not going to camp.
traded. They're I think all these running backs are in cahoots, and they should be, because it's almost like they have this little running back union that they have to form with Saquon Barkley, all these guys having
Pollard.
to, kind of take one for the team to get their
Well,
worth.
let me ask you this, Brad. Has the NFL devalued running backs to the way that I feel about kickers?
It's close, man. I saw Field Yates put out a tweet kind of talking about the cap hit, or not the cap hit, franchise tags, the value of franchise tags for like quarterbacks, running backs, whatever. It's increasing, since 2015 and beyond for all these positions, because what the franchise, and you might know better than I do on the
Uh-huh.
definition of like a franchise tag is you're getting paid out top 5 annual salary.
Depending on where you are, where you were drafted, and all of those things, you want to be paid as a top 5 guy. But there hasn't been anybody who's signed for $10 million for quite some time.
Right. So
And yeah,
it was at 2015. It was like at 10.9 was the franchise tag amount.
correct.
This year it's at 10.1, so it's going backwards
Yes.
for the running back
And
position.
look, this is interesting because of the flow of the game and the way things have changed. And running backs used to be the reason that your team went forward, right? Like you used to have a workhorse back and you would have a guy who you just fed the ball to 30 times. It's just not how the game goes
Right.
anymore, right? It's much more spread out. There's no more base defense. You have to have speed on this. And I think this is the perfect way to transition into the play callers pod, like, and all this stuff, because that's all the stuff that I learned, like from listening about Kyle and McVay and McDaniel and all of them, is it's being a step ahead, and then the evolution of the game, and how do you respond to the evolution of the game. And that's just where we are, unfortunately. Now, the part about it that's really frustrating, I feel, for these players is running backs take the most punishment, and at times are leaned on to, like, close out games,
Mhm.
and now they're just being devalued to the point that, like, it does feel like there's a bit of a union where they have to band together and try to get what they're worth. And unfortunately, it's just the way the game is going. You pay receivers, you pay quarterbacks, you pay linemen, you pay tight ends, you pay everybody except running backs at this point. And I don't blame them, especially a guy like Josh Jacobs, who just led the league in rushing, a guy like Saquon Barkley, who literally is the reason that their team moved on into the playoffs and beat Kirk Cousins. That quarterback documentary is awesome, by the way. That too on Netflix. That's really something you should watch. But it's just interesting to watch roster construction and how, like, even the idea of drafting Bijan Robinson so early had people up in arms.
It did. People were like, they were like, "Oh, what a reach." Like, this is, I mean, it was hard to say it was a bust pick because they knew that it was in one hand they were like, well, Bijan Robinson's a phenomenal talent, but in the other hand, this doesn't match the value in which you select these guys. You don't select running backs in the top 10 anymore. But to be honest, man, like, and kind of like to piggyback off the stuff that you were saying, it's just like the running backs have such a tough hand because they play 4 to 5 years on team controlled deals, right? And by that time, especially if they've been used from a rookie on, they're probably close to 1,000 carries on their bodies, which means they've been hit a lot, they've been tackled a lot. There's probably room for wear and tear, and you don't want to find yourself in a Todd Gurley situation where you pay Todd Gurley for what he was, and what you get is not even like 15% of what Todd Gurley in his prime was. So it's a tough situation for both sides because organizations have to protect themselves, and rightfully so. And when you pay a running back at 27, 28, 29, you're just waiting for the fall off. It's not when is it going to, like, it's going to happen. So it's just a tough position right now. It's just really hard.
Well, look at it like this, Brad. If I would have told you a few years ago, three running backs would be unsigned in this offseason: Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott. They're all unsigned.
Dalvin Cook?
Dalvin Cook. I mean, like, why is this happening? And the reason that it's happening is because of the way that people are building their rosters. You draft a running back and you use the rookie pay scale to your advantage, and you continue to draft guys because they come out, like, again, like right now, what's Miami doing? Raheem Mostert, Jeffrey Wilson, and Ashan, right? Like,
Yep.
okay, like, again, like the Seattle Seahawks drafted Kenneth Walker last year. You draft Zach Charbonnet this year, and you continue to insulate yourself in that way. It's just the way the game is played now. Unfortunately, running backs are the ones who have to bear this part of it, and it sucks because so many of them are so good. So many of them, when needed, are the crux of your team. I mean, like, what would Cleveland be without Nick Chubb? What would the 49ers be without Christian McCaffrey? Right? Like, what would what would certain teams be without their guys?
That's a serious question, though. Like,
It
what would
is,
the 49ers look like last year without CMC, with
right?
Jimmy going down and Brock? Because we know the effects of gravity that Christian McCaffrey has on defenses. Kittle's talked about it. Shanahan's talked about it. Everyone talks about it. We know how good CMC is and what he was able to provide in a year where, it is what it is. Deebo Samuel took a step back from the year prior. I mean, he had a phenomenal year the year prior, but he did take a step back and didn't have that same level of gravity. CMC came in and he picked up that role, and it really helped the entire offense as a whole because defenses had to key on him, and didn't matter if he was out in the flat, whether he was staying in for pass protection, didn't matter. They had to know where CMC was at all times. And it's going to be interesting when CMC's up, what those contract negotiations are going to look like, because if CMC comes out and has a massive year like we all expect he will, I
Or
mean,
need him. They need him to have
yeah,
that.
I mean, if you had to put a percentage on it of CMC hitting 1,000 again, do you think that could happen in this offense with this amount of weapons, with this defense, with everything? Would that be a higher percentage, or do you recognize that going 1,000 is pretty damn hard, and being able to do that might not be as easy as it sounds?
It's probably a lower percentage just because of all the guys. And there's something about the way Debo Samuel's been talking that I feel like he's angry and he wants to prove something this year. And I
He's
do think
he's
they
different
want
right now.
they
This
want
is
to get
different Debo
they want
Samuel.
to get him involved. I think this is
Yeah.
Debo's like year where he like really wants to make a statement. Hearing a guy say, "I don't like what I put on film last year," and I think that's refreshing, right? Some people would take that as, well, maybe he's lost his confidence. No, I just think that's someone who's angry and realizes, you know what, last year wasn't my best. So, with all these weapons and everything, I don't think the 49ers need Christian McCaffrey to go 1,000. I think if he goes 1,000, it's a great thing, but that would be more an indictment around about the either health or productivity of the other weapons, which would scare me just a little bit, right? Like we all expect contract year Brandon Ayuk to hoop. And I think this is his year, right? Like if we're talking about who's going to lead the team in receiving, I think the smart money's on Brandon Ayuk. Well, I also just talked about Debo Samuel being angry. Oh, by the way, George Kittle isn't getting any closer to being younger. Isn't he going to want the ball, right? So again, like this is the part, and we got a super chat that kind of talks about it real quick. So like I think we could pivot to that right there. Um, Brandon says, "What's up, Niner fan? Brad and Jason, keep doing what y'all are doing. Y'all are great. Appreciate that. If I can ask both of you, which side of the ball do you think is going to have a better year, offense or defense?" Brad, if I could take this one quickly, I think it's the defense. And I wrote about it today on Niners Nation about who has the most to gain on both sides of the ball in training camp. And on the offensive side, I said Elijah Mitchell. And not only because I believe Elijah Mitchell is the key to keeping Christian McCaffrey healthy and fresh, but because he needs to build a reputation in this league that he can stay healthy and play year after year for a whole season. So this is he has a lot to gain here. But on the defensive side, if all the confidence they've shown in Drake Jackson comes to fruition, then this defense goes to a completely different level, right? Like I think right now with that other edge position, we're all thinking Drake Jackson can take a leap and he'll be spelled by other people. But what if Drake Jackson is that guy that they really believe he is? Like that they thought they were getting a steal in the second round. What does that do to this defense? And now you're starting a line of Bosa, Armstead, Hargraves, and Drake Jackson, who's dominating on the other side. It's those two guys. So I'm going to take defense on this one. I'm not sure how you feel about it.
No, I'd be right there with you. I think defense right now on paper is pretty terrifying. I mean, you talked about the defensive line. We know it starts up front. We know Chris Kosarek is going to put those guys in a great job to succeed. We know year in, year out, put your clock to it, put your watch to it, your Apple Watch to it. Someone's going to bust out outside of the main four guys. And if we're calling the main four guys, the guys you listed, someone else is still going to have a potential 6-sack campaign
Javon Kinlaw?
and provide multiple pressures
Javon
upwards
Kinlaw?
into the 30s or the 40s. Last year was Omenihu.
Javon
This
Kinlaw?
year, you're calling Javon Kinlaw. Could
No,
be it.
I'm just saying that. But I mean, again, like that's a possibility. A guy who was drafted so high in the draft is a rotational guy that could benefit from all of these other guys being there. Again, I'm just being optimistic. That's all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but I think defense has absolutely got the upper hand because you're looking at the line. Look at the linebacker core. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw absolutely broke out last year, and he'll probably get even better. You have breakout candidates like Marcelino McCrary Ball. He has an opportunity to take some massive strides in training camp. Potentially D. Winters steps up. Again, Charvarius Ward in year 2 in this system with Steve Wilkes has an opportunity to get even better. Talanoa Hufanga, again, we know what the accolades that he was able to obtain last year. He can also take steps forward and get better. And you add guys like Jair Brown to the mix. It's going to be interesting to see what we get out of Gip. But Diamador Lenore, Isaiah, all of this defense is stacked. Samuel Womack is a guy who we thought heading all throughout training camp, all throughout preseason, we're like, oh, we got a guy at nickel cornerback in Samuel Womack. He didn't really see the field because he played primarily special teams because they bumped Jimmy Ward down to nickel. So there's depth, there's ascending players, you have your top tier players anchoring each level of the defense, but then you have these young dogs behind them that are still somewhat unproven, which allows this defense, who we know rotates players, to be creative, to be able to shift things around, show different looks and fronts, and it gives them a ton of flexibility. And this defense is probably the most, I think we can confidently say, is the deepest we've seen under Kyle Shanahan, would you say?
Yeah, probably at this point, especially when you consider the guys that they believe in, that they drafted, and the 49ers that think so much about this. Justin Houston's available, Unique Ngakwe's available. Like all these guys are available for you to sign, and you're just going to roll in the training camp with your $9 million, possibly more once they sign Nick Bosa. Not possibly. Nick Bosa is getting signed next week, right before training camp. Next week. So, like,
Right.
you heard it here first. Nick Bosa is getting signed next week, before training camp.
Sources
And
say Nick Bosa is getting signed next week.
if the streets are talking and we have history or anything that needs to talk about it, it's right before training camp. Nick Bosa is going to get paid. That clears more money. The 49ers right now essentially are telling you, I am good where we are. We have a defensive mastermind. We have a guy who is going to be creative. We talked about it, Brad. There's going to be 3 safety sets. Look for my guy Tig to make a big impact immediately and have them be flexible. And that money is going to be there for someone that will push them over the top in the middle of the season. And if you don't need anybody during the season, what's the beauty of it? Keep that money and just keep it rolling into next year. And maybe use that money to sign Brandon Ayuk. So again, the 49ers are in a spot that they have built such a deep roster that they have ultimate flexibility. And as much as I would love to see a veteran pass rusher get in here, someone who would be chasing a ring, I don't think it's absolutely necessary if their calculations are correct about Drake Jackson, having Cleveland Farrell be there, Kerry Hyder's back as well too. Even what Brad's floated out there, Eric Armstead on the edge. Stop playing, Woo! Man. If you catch a tackle that's looking scary, and Eric Armstead can get out there, now you're really talking about really jamming up these fronts and being flexible, man. So the 49ers are exactly where they should be, and they're in an envious position because many teams would like to be in that position.
Yeah, and I think you hit it. I think you hit it straight on. Daniel says bring in a vet edge player. The beautiful thing is that the 49ers can just sit back and wait. They can get into training camp. They can see what their rotations are looking like and then make the decision at the beginning of training camp. I think the 49ers have proven to us they feel pretty good with where they're at. And we'll see what these rotations look like up front. We know Chris is going to shift all these guys all over the place, but again, the key factor is Javon Hargrave. I almost call him Javon Kinlaw. Javon Hargrave is the anchor that the 49ers have been missing since Defoe. So what?
I'm sorry. What? I don't want to.
No, go. It's too late.
There. It's the comments there. It's not me. I'm not trying to get you up off of it or whatever. You're gonna see it, So. JKBG.
Yeah, I see it.
Why does he always, dude? Thank you so much for always like making me laugh and getting me off course. And it's so good, man. I always appreciate you, bro. Like he's the best, man. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get you off your spot.
Getting back on the train of thought. Javon Hargrave is really going to be the difference maker for that. I think 100%. The entire defense, because they have an anchor. They finally have an anchor on the interior.
Well, let me ask you this, and I wrote about this too on Niners Nation. If you guys don't know, I write for Niners Nation, by the way. Like this is
out here cooking on Niners Nation.
Yeah, I mean every day we writing. But who is second on the 49ers in sacks? Because I think if all goes well, we can pencil in Nick Bosa as the team leader for sacks.
Yeah.
Who would be second? And this is so there's many ways to go about this. The obvious smart money would be Javon Hargrave.
Yes.
But I've got arguments for other people as well too. So I'd love to hear what you think about that.
I definitely would have Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead battling it out for those two kind 100%. Of spots. Because I think, like I said, Javon, the quickest way to create pressure is through the interior. And Javon Hargrave is a matchup nightmare with centers and guards. So, and if you're sliding protection to Nick Bosa and they're really concerned about that, and they can somehow get backside guards and half a center on Javon's going to be able to slip those blocks. He's going to be able to get skinny. He's going to be able to get through and bust through these double teams, and he has an opportunity to create a lot of havoc. But also on that same talking point, the guys on the edges have an opportunity to clean up. So if you've got Javon and Eric, as we assume will be your IDLs, and they're playing games, they're creating pressure on the interior, it actually might produce more sack production for the guys on the edge. So, with that logic, who's the opposite edge of Nick Bosa? That guy could be the second in sacks.
That's the thing. Is this is a beautiful discussion because the smart money's on Javon Hargrave. He's the best defensive tackle that was on the market. The 49ers, he was the best available free agent, and the 49ers added him. Not only stealing him from Philadelphia, who I'm a sleeper agent for. It's but think about this though. The amount of the amount of attention that he attracts. And now Eric Armstead's getting one-on-ones. Drake Jackson's getting one-on-ones, and guys are not necessarily shifting their eyes there. And remember, I'm a big proponent of I prefer pressures over sacks. Sacks are great because you finish, but you could fall into a sack by filling your gap, being in the right spot at the right time, and the quarterback turns your way, right? Like you didn't necessarily
Mm-hmm.
apply the pressure, but I do think it's an interesting discussion because, again, the smart money's on Hargrave. But I wouldn't be shocked if Eric Armstead went absolutely bananas this year if he plays all 17 games in terms of being on the field and just getting sacks. And then what if Drake Jackson takes this extra step and now he's seeing just one offensive tackle every single game, every single time, and he's able to pin his ears back on third down, and you're hoping that your running back can chip him a little bit, and he turns into this guy. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to the defense. The defense, for me, has such an amazing chance to outperform the offense because offenses tend to outperform their own defenses, but this team is different than everybody else.
Yep. And you go back to that 2019 year when talking about Eric Armstead, he played a lot from the big end, from the Leo spot. He had 11 sacks. Obviously, he had DeForest Buckner as the anchor, and he also had D Ford to work in there as well. But we saw Eric Armstead have a lot of success playing on the edge. Again, I was kind of shocked by it because I've always been a proponent of Eric Armstead playing over the three tech or, in that 1-3, 0-3 gap integrity area. But when I went back and I was kind of doing this like conspiracy theory, Eric's going to play more edge. I went back to 2019. I was like, wow, he actually played a lot of edge and he had 11 sacks. And so if the 49ers can get back to that and you see Eric Armstead looking lean, you got an anchor on the interior and you got Bosa on the other side, and then you just run games like Eric Armstead. What has Eric Armstead done so well for the 49ers? He's so good at crashing down on
Space
that
Eater.
stunt game. Yes, taking out the center, taking out the guard, looping the other guy around. That guy gets the credit for the sack or the pressure. Eric Armstead set the whole thing up.
Thank you,
This
Brad.
thing
You
with
know ball.
Javon and Eric is they can be interchangeable, and
100%.
you can put them on the outside. They can do outside stunts. So this is going to be the best defensive line we've seen since 2019. And I still credit the 2019 defensive line being the key reason why they went 13-3 and almost won the Super Bowl. That defensive line was insane. This is the closest thing that we've seen. So the original question that was posed, offense or defense, starts up front. I'm a firm believer if it starts in the trenches. You as well. And you go trenches, you go linebackers, you go DBs. 49ers pretty stacked. Wouldn't you say on defense?
100%. I mean, there's not many holes. I mean, whether it's Isaiah Oliver or Samuel Womack, I think you're fine at nickel. You have everything else pretty much set up. I have the opinion that I think you're going to see Tig either later in the season, more in Gibson's spot than anything. But again, just an opinion. But I love that you brought up that point about Eric Armstead and who gets credit for what. You got the sack, but you didn't cause the sack. He causes the sack. That's the thing about, I hate to sound elitist, but that's what watching the tapes for. That's exactly what watching the tapes for. It's exactly what you're doing. So you can watch, you can see why things develop and they move in that direction. And that's what Eric Armstead, I feel a lot of people, when they try to speak about his salary, want to bring up the numbers. And when you watch him play, I think it's quite evident what it is that he does, even if it doesn't result in a pressure or a sack for him. And I can think off the top of my head, the Miami game, the interception that Jimmy Ward got was a result of Eric Armstead like dragging three guys into Tua Tagovailoa, right, and like getting the pressure there. That's the type of stuff that like people like just it falls by the wayside, and everybody's just so wrapped up in, well, how much is he being paid? How many sacks did he get? That's the beauty of watching the tape, is you're able to see the real impact. And I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Well, and it's like we remember Justin Smith. Justin Smith wasn't a big production guy, but he
100%.
was a huge reason why the San Francisco 49ers were so
Let's
dominant
go. Let's go,
up front.
Cowboy.
So anytime we can bring the cowboy into the show, I will do it. Brian, appreciate the super chat. Says on a scale of 1 to 10, how hyped do these recent Trey videos have y'all to watch him at training camp? Do you expect a difference in him? You took the last super chat one first. I'll take this one first.
Go ahead.
I'm excited to see all these quarterbacks because it has been debated to hell and back. It's been every point has been regurgitated, resurfaced, and rediscussed, and brought to this. These conclusions have started to be put out there. This is how I look at it. Again, we did this exercise on my channel during the summer. We watched Trey versus Texans, we watched Brock versus Dolphins, and we watched Sam versus Tampa. Arguably, you could make the case that those were some of the three best games that those guys have played in recent memory. And watching it all, you could see where Trey needed to develop. And it came with processing. It came with being smoother, more rhythmic, being comfortable, those types of things. So with Trey and all these offseason videos, we are seeing a smoother release package. It looks like he's not thinking about it. He's not like a golfer lining up to hit his swing, and he has to just go through this process of like, all right, my feet are wide, my hips, my knees, all right, hands. He's not going through this process anymore. It's like he's just throwing it. So for Trey, I am excited to see how comfortable Trey is, because I really think that's what will translate to the best version of Trey is comfortability. He knows the offense. I don't think that's an issue. They always talk about how well he's picked up the offense. It's now being able to functionally execute the offense.
Mm-hmm.
And with comfortability, confidence, and belief in what he can do, there should be an uptick in what he does in training camp. And all these quarterbacks playing to their best of their ability is the best possible thing for the San Francisco 49ers next year.
Yeah, and I believe it was last night Croc sent out a tweet saying, shout out to my boy Croc, the GOAT of this podcasting thing. Trey Lance balling out in training camp is Kyle Shanahan's worst nightmare. And I don't necessarily, again, agree with that. Only because why wouldn't you want all of these guys playing to the best of their ability? And if Brock Purdy's healthy, then he's deserved the shot to be the guy, because no matter what you see in practice from Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, even Brandon Allen, to JKBG's point, Brock Purdy's done it on the field. So he deserves that shot first because of that. And I don't disagree with that at all. And the only thing I disagree with Croc when he says that is Trey Lance should be showing steps. It's your third year in the system. This is, you're basically right now what Trey Lance is doing is fighting for his football life right now at this point.
Oh, 100%.
And pressure either makes diamonds or busts pipes.
Yep.
So it's up to you, buddy. Like, it's on you right now at this point. I understand that the situation around him hasn't been ideal, and I don't think that anybody's wrong for feeling like this is an unfortunate set of circumstances for Trey Lance, because he was set to be the starter. They were ready to go through the bumps and bruises, but Trey, when Trey gets injured and Jimmy gets injured and Brock comes in and plays the way that he does, what are you supposed to say? What are you supposed to do? And when you look around at this roster, you've got to give those guys in that locker room the best chance to win. right? And I think they were fully prepared last year to go through that. He gets injured, fine. It's not that they hate Trey, it's just an unfortunate set of circumstances for the young man. But also, on the flip side, you being able to find production in the way that you did from the last pick in the NFL draft is a testament to you, your system, your weapons, your coaching. So the whole idea that Trey Lance, playing well in training camp is a problem, I don't see it that way. I do think that the best thing is for every single player who plays for the San Francisco 49ers, regardless of starting or behind, is playing their best football one way or another. And I think that that's no different with Trey Lance. So it's interesting when it comes to this. Again, you can look at a Trey Lance video on the internet. You can get as excited as you want. I'm not telling you not to be excited. I need to see it in games when the pads are popping, when there's a guy bearing down on you. Are you going to revert back to the old things that you did? Did what you learned, did what you changed stick? Those are the things you're looking for. So yeah, man. I mean, I think there's no big problem with this. Brock Purdy deserves to get his first shot, but it's not bad to have a guy behind you who's playing his best football ever. And if things unfortunately go wrong with injury or regression, that you can turn to a guy with the tools that Trey Lance has. So I don't think it's a big problem.
That was very well said, Jason. I did see Croc's tweet as well, and I could see it from multiple perspectives. It's kind of how I try to go about covering the 49ers and things like that, because there's multiple ways that you can process things. Like, I could see from a potential PR standpoint where, obviously all the messaging has been Brock Purdy's going to be our guy. He's the leader in the clubhouse, all that stuff. It puts you in a tough position if Trey Lance is balling out. But also, on the other hand, if Trey Lance is balling out and he's making that a difficult, like, where you really have to, like, oh, who do we put out there
Best
week
case
one?
scenario.
That's a good problem to
That's a
have.
great
I
thing.
mean,
It's an
if you're
amazing
a
thing to have.
head coach and you just won however many games with Brock Purdy, and oh, look, our third overall pick has matured and developed and is making us actually have to ask this question of, wow, who do we put in? Who gets that shot? Or if one doesn't work out, we feel confident with X guy to step in and do that role. That's a good thing. So from Croc's perspective, I don't know what the context in which he was saying that. I can understand how a certain context would be. Yeah, it would be kind of a nightmare scenario to, like, just this ongoing quarterback battle
Right,
conversation.
and have to like sit over at night and think about, like, should I play these guys?
How am
Right.
I going to
Yeah.
talk to the media about this? What am I
Of
going to
course.
say? How do I not put
100%.
myself into a corner?
Because if you move yourself into Trey, you have to explain how you moved away from a guy who operated the offense to the way that Brock did.
Right.
And I don't envy being Kyle Shanahan. I don't.
Right.
I
I
don't
agree.
envy it.
I agree. It's a hard decision. It's a
Of
hard
course.
decision nonetheless. But from a, I would say, pure X's and O's standpoint, Trey Lance balling out is a great
Hell yeah.
situation, because it's only going to push everyone else around him. It's only going to push Brock more. It's only going to push Sam more. Those guys are going to push on each
Uh
other.
well, can I go off like just a little bit? Just a little bit. I don't want to get
Go
too
for it.
spicy. Just a little bit.
Go for it.
Notice how quickly the Sam Donald thing has gone away.
Has it gone
How-
away?
It has. It has. Because now you have people in the national media talking about, oh, he needs to pick up the offense now. And it went from literally being like, oh, Sam's definitely going to start because X, Y, and Z. And there was no sort of tangible football opinion behind it because there was no football being played, to now, well, Sam needs a little bit more time to figure out the offense. Sam's working through some things. Guys, please. I think, again, this is what I'm going to say. Like my father used to say, and it's like one of his cheesiest sayings. When someone's trying to tell you who they are, believe them. And Sam Darnold's been trying to tell you for a long time that he's not that guy. And 6 games of him being mediocre doesn't change the overall 54 games or whatever it is, 48 games, whatever it is. scenario of him not being good. And the idea around Sam Darnold is more about the fact that everyone knows how good Kyle Shanahan is. And that's a whole other discussion because that's part of the reason so many people are so gung ho on Brock Purdy. Let me cook. So gung ho on Brock Purdy also. And I think this is the perfect segue into the play callers thing because like I have so many good nuggets from the thing. But in one way, you are using Kyle Shanahan's system to tell you that you believe Sam Darnold could hoop. But in the same way, you don't want to think that Brock Purdy being with Kyle Shanahan is sort of the perfect marriage and that the system still uplifts other guys. Just saying.
So, sorry, I got distracted. But with Sam, I mean, we've seen what he's put together, and it's not been pretty. Again, we were like we did the film breakdown. It was like he fumbled twice on snaps. And what did we hear about OTAs? He was still fumbling with snaps. Like those are his problems. Like he has
that has nothing to do with system, by the way, Brad. That's not system.
Those are the problems that
that's not system, that's not weapons, that's not coaching, that's none of that. And those are the things that are there. They've been there for you to analyze, but you believe that being in Kyle Shanahan's system and Deebo Samuel being lined up to him is going to allow him to hold on to the ball.
I believe his issue is confidence. That's where that comes from.
Yes.
It stems from lacking confidence and being too much in his head, kind of like what we talked about with Trey Lance, being too much in his head, thinking too much about this, thinking too much about the process. You overanalyze the process, you might trip up every once in a while. I think that's Sam's biggest issue. His biggest issue is he's an overprocessor, and he's lost a lot of confidence with his time in the league. Can Kyle Shanahan rebuild that confidence in Sam? That's the question. Because if he can, then there is a glimmer of hope for Sam, but we don't know until we actually see on the field on game days. Does practice count?
Practice counts, but practice isn't Sundays.
It's
and not. Jimmy Garoppolo can throw a ton of practice interceptions, but if he throws 3 touchdowns on Sunday, that's all that matters. Right. And it's the same thing. Unfortunately, and this is where we are going back to Trey Lance. Trey Lance can show whatever he wants during practice, and I think that's an important step. But Brock Purdy has done it in games. Yeah. And I think that's the hardest part for people to discern when it comes to this.
Brock Purdy does all the small things exceptionally well.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of the conversation gets lost with Brock is the intangible aspects of being able to gain single-handedly the entire confidence of an entire locker room of elite players across the board and them have unwavering faith and confidence in this guy. That is a difficult task, and that deserves a lot of credit just in 100%. Of itself. And then everything from a quarterback process standpoint, calling the play in the huddle, managing the huddle. One of the first things we heard about Brock was him telling Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk and these guys to shut up because he was trying to get the play call out and they were messing him up. And they didn't take that as like, oh, this guy's being an ass. They're like, command the huddle, young man. That's exactly what you got to do as the quarterback. You are the manager.
I'm not yelling at Trent Williams.
You are the guy with the notepad. Like you're scheduling everyone's time. When you're the quarterback, you're in charge when the coach is on the sideline. And the fact that he was able to come in and command that is a huge reason why they were able to win games as well. So there's a lot of things that go into Brock that make him good. If Trey can improve on those areas, I think the sky's the limit for Trey. 100%. But they're just at different levels. Like that's when we go back to like we can go to all our pre-draft conversations, talking about experience and like what experience means for quarterbacks, like being able to go out there and be in these situations so you know what to do as a reflex, not as a process. Trey's still in the process portion. Yep. Brock is reflexing. He knows what to do. There's already an answer and an avenue. He knows where it is. He just has to find. He's not perfect, but he's a rookie and he can get better. So there's a lot of different things going on with each individual developmental stage of each quarterback, they're all in little silos of where they are developmentally. I don't think you
Mhm.
can compare them apples to apples. They're all just in such different places in their careers and in their from high school to college to now. It's just so different. You can't just keep comparing these guys. They are
Mhm.
in their own individual silo of development. And I think it's easier to quantify the quarterback situation when you treat each one as their own individual developmental, they have their own path, right? Does that make sense?
It does. And I think everything isn't apples to apples when we're talking about it, right? Like one guy absolutely needs more reps. And obviously, he's just been through an unfortunate set of circumstances. I think it's something that we wouldn't be able to quantify, like, because we never could have foreseen this. And I just think it really does get easy when you really break it down into terms of this guy performed. This is what we did. This is where we're going, right? Now, if you want to try to predict the future, that's a whole other thing. But I think hindsight is always 2020. And right now they have to go with the guy that did whatever he did and has the bigger track record in terms of that. My only plea to one of these young men that is quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers is this. Please, one of you guys lock this down, because if you don't, if none of you do, hold on to your hats, San Francisco 49ers fans. Kirk Cousins descends upon you. And 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 that's not even me speculating in terms of just because Kyle loves Kirk. When we were at the combine, there was an uncertainty around Brock Purdy and his surgery. There was an uncertainty whether he would play, and the 49ers certainly asked, what do you need for Kirk Cousins to be here? So my plea to anybody, Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, Brandon Allen, Josh Johnson, when you eventually get released and join the 49ers, one of you, lock this down, because if not, Kirk Cousins descends upon you. I mean, I know that people don't like to hear that, but Kirk Cousins will be fine here. You just need that defense to be absolutely stellar, like incredible, like not giving up points at all, anything like that. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah.
I got enough. I got enough talking about Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, and I'm not ready for the Kirk Cousins conversation. So I'm gonna push that
So
one off
no,
till next
SoCal
year.
SoCal Niner fan says, so you're saying there's a chance we'll be doing this type of offseason again next year. SoCal Niner fan, I love you, buddy. And I think your
It's
name is
possible.
Vincent, actually, in real life. We've been doing this since Steve Young has left. We've been doing it every single year. We just haven't done it on Twitter. We've been doing it every single year. Why would next year be any different?
I like your plea. Just someone take hold. Just take the
Someone,
reins. Just
I
take the
don't
reins.
care.
Just
Save
galvanize the
us.
fan base.
Save
Get us
us.
on the same page again. Focusing about wins, focusing about beating the opponent instead of beating the opposing fan of the player and
Us.
this weird
Save us.
dynamic of this
Save
fan
us.
base.
I will say
Uh,
this.
we
I will
can't
say
take it.
this. I will say this. Watching the documentary about Kirk Cousins, the quarterback documentary on Netflix,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
he played through injuries last year, and he doesn't miss games. He does not miss games.
I love
Respect
him.
that. Respect that at least. Respect that at least. Now, speaking of Cobb, I'm twisting this to the play callers thing because there's so many
Spin
good
it.
things. But
Spin
yes,
us out of it.
for anybody, I don't work for the Athletic. I have no dog in this fight. I work for Niners Nation. I don't work for the Athletic. But anybody who hasn't listened to the Play Callers podcast, that Jordan Rodriguez, who works for the LA Rams, but she works for the Athletic as well, put together. It's a 5-part podcast series that is about Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur, Robert Saleh, basically every single person that is a part of the Shanahan tree. And trust me, oh, it's deeper than you think, and it's way more people than you believe. There are so many good nuggets in here. So, for instance, let's start. Kyle Shanahan, I believe in episode 3, got into the 2019 playoff, the playoff, I believe the game plan that he had. Remember, the 49ers had week 1 off, right, in the playoffs, and the Minnesota Vikings beat the New Orleans Saints. So Minnesota comes to Santa Clara for the divisional round, right? And the divisional round, Kyle Shanahan said, I'm going to run the ball 35 effing times. And I don't need to see anything else because my defense is doing something to Kirk Cousins that he can't beat. And he goes, and the one time I called a throw in that game, Jimmy almost threw it to a linebacker. His words, not me.
I think I know what throw you're talking about too.
His words,
Yeah.
not me. His words, not mine. And then he said, we literally ran the ball the entire time. And he said, what did I do the next week? What did I call? 8 pass plays? And then he goes, I think we won 37-3.
Raheem Mostert went crazy, 4 touchdowns, over 200
Again, in the NFC title game.
Yep.
Just some context for however you want to use it. However you want to use it. However you feel that you should use his words. Whether that's to prop up Kyle, whether that's for you to talk crazy about Jimmy Garoppolo. These were his words. These were his words and how he wants to do things. One thing that's probably going to make people the maddest, and the one thing that I have the biggest gripe about, was when he said about, they were asking him about the 28-3 game. And Kyle said, I wish that I was younger and I could feel more conservative. I wish that I wouldn't, jump off the bridge. I wish that I felt like and as I get older, I break out of that. And it's like, thanks for saying those things now, but damn, forget the Atlanta game. Obviously, you guys know I'm equating it to what happened in the Super Bowl, but I implore you guys for you just to listen to this thing and listen to the way that Mike McDaniel put in something that made RG3 unstoppable in 2012. Listen to the way that everything that they run, and I've double checked it and cross-referenced it with film, and that's one of the videos that I have coming out very soon about certain concepts and the way Mike runs it, the way LaFleur runs it, the way McVay runs it, the way Kyle runs it, because of personnel. So all these guys are running the same stuff, but they're not running it the same way because they have different personnel. They see things differently, and all of this is spreading across the league. Every single team eventually, one way or another, whether they don't or they do now, is going to be running something, either exactly like Kyle or something to that effect. So whether you are excited about Kyle being your coach, please understand that people are trying to catch up to your coach. And you can take that however it is that you want to take it. That's what I walked away with that.
I think because I've talked about this a lot. Like there's Kyle Shanahan, who's a phenomenal play caller, play designer, mind, all that type of things. My biggest takeaway was how they managed the personal side of things, the emotional intelligence side of things. They're very demanding bunch, is what my takeaway was. They don't let anything slide. They're gonna roast the hell out of you. You better have an answer for everything. If
Robert
you don't,
Robert Saleh said
your neck.
Robert Saleh said that him and Kyle wouldn't talk for weeks while arguing about that stuff. And you're absolutely right. Like, Kyle will ask you a question and you need the why. If you don't have the why, he's not. And I'll let you finish. I have one more, like a good nugget that's like stuck in my head, like from listening to it. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Kyle's not going to put his arm around you.
Nope.
He's not going to say, come here, buddy. Let's figure out how to make this work. You're in a rough patch. Let's figure this out. Kyle's like, you better get your butt out of this hole, or I'm going to get someone else in here who can. That's been something that I've talked about with Kyle Shanahan, something I picked up like right away with his kind of personality. He's a phenomenal coach. He clearly requires a certain level of player. That's why your Dante Pettis's don't pan out. That's why your Deebo Samuels do, because they can take the barrage from Kyle Shanahan, which let's call a spade a spade. He is a hard ass coach.
Yep.
Like, he's old school, hard ass. I'm going to come down and just beat you up
That's what he
if for
wants.
not doing it right. I'm not going to put my arm around you when you do it right. Like you do it right, that's my expectation. We move on.
Yep.
He's not I would say like all these defensive coordinators, D'Amico Ryans, Robert Saleh, Steve Wilks are his counter. They
Yep.
are the counter opposite of him.
Yep.
Maybe not from a scheme perspective, but from a personality perspective. And I think that's why it works, is
Yeah.
because he recognizes that about himself. But he also recognizes he does need some of those guys on the staff. He needs some guys that will be able to make you feel a little bit better and put your arm around you and, do those types of things. That
Yeah.
was my biggest takeaway, because it's always something that I've kind of suspected of Kyle, but they just flat out, they just like this. It is what it is. It's a hard environment. Everyone, they're going to bump. It's not if they bump, they're going to bump heads. It's
Yes.
like, it's
Yep.
just like, we're going to bump heads every day.
Yep.
But when it comes to game time, it's going to, at the end of the day, make us better, because we've went through every option, every scenario, every little thing. And if you have the mentality and the mindset to withstand that, you will be successful. That goes
100%.
back to my thing with Trey Lance. Trey has got to be able to withstand that. He
Yeah.
has to have the confidence to be able to understand that arm isn't coming to be put around him. He's the expectation is going to be laid out. He has to meet it. That's the
Yep.
only way he'll get in good graces with Kyle. That's
Yep.
it. And that was one of my biggest takeaways.
Yep. And every single one of those guys is competing because they're competing against Kyle. So there was another portion of it.
I like what Brian just said. Kyle's the coach
100%.
you want. He's the coach
100%.
you need.
And if
I,
he's not on your ass, he don't like you.
right. If he's not chirping you, you're
He don't
done.
like
You're
you're done. You like
yeah.
forget a doghouse. You're finished. It's a lot about the way that he goes about and the tone that he's trying to set. And honestly, man, I think Kyle is so deep into the X's and O's that sometimes some other things get lost by the wayside, in terms of like, just it's always scheme and what I believe and what I've gotten. And, there was a part where he was working on the staff that John Gruden was working at in Tampa Bay, and he sat in the defensive room so he can learn the rules. And that's the best part about Kyle is I know what you are taught to do on defense, and I'm going to use those rules. I want you to play your defense exactly how you were taught. I want you to play your defense, play your rules, go to your keys, and I'm going to use those rules against you. And in that way, give myself an advantageous, situation where I can get the ball to somebody and get somebody wide open. It's all of the little attention to detail and all the little things that I think people don't appreciate. Regardless of whether the 49ers have won a Super Bowl or not, there's probably 4 or 5 coaches in this league that I would replace Kyle Shanahan with. And those guys are not going anywhere anytime soon. And I think you know who the answer is. It's Andy Reid, it's Harbaugh, it's Tomlin, it's Belichick, maybe. Because everybody credits Bill Belichick for the way that he shut down the Rams offense in the Super Bowl, but it was really Vic Fangio in Chicago that started running 6-1, started having defensive lines in your gap, started having safeties come down and play the role of an outside linebacker, stopping your outside zone. It was him
Rushing
that
your outside zone.
exactly. This is exactly where it started. It wasn't Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick copied that and used it. And Jared
It was
Goff,
Vic.
right. Well, and Jared Goff, unfortunately, he played the most under center that year. So when he went back and, you run play action, you've got your back to the defense, you pull the ball back, you see one thing when you're looking at first. When you look back, it's a whole other look. He was flabbergasted. That's all Vic Fangio. That's what Mike McDaniel talked about. When I had a chance to sign Vic Fangio, it was because Vic is the godfather. Vic's the real godfather of all of this stuff that you see out here. In any way that you ever see a Shanahan offense ever get slowed down, in any way, it's because Vic has figured out a way to align you, get you in a spot where you can't hit those explosives, which is all you're worried about, and also puts pressure on your quarterback to make decisions. That's why Sean McVay went on and got Matthew Stafford. That's why when you look at these guys, you need a guy who, when things aren't perfect and your scheme isn't working, you have to be able to decipher. Okay, two's coming down. I'm looking here. That's not there. I know where my other read is. And those are the reasons that Kyle Shanahan and a lot of these guys are trying to do something that nobody else can do, which is win a Super Bowl without an elite processor and quarterback. And that's what makes what he's doing so head scratching, because you look at the roster, you look at how this offense is moving, but you realize that without a quarterback that can give you a little more, it might not be enough. And unfortunately, that's just where we are. This podcast, I promise you, I don't work for The Athletic. I don't work for Jordan Rodriguez. I don't care about this is all about you guys listening and learning about the attention to detail and learning about the little things that are lost on game day because we're drinking too many beers and we're yelling at people in the house, or we're in our emotions because the result wasn't there. The little things, the X's and O's, are the beauty of football, and is why I am so enamored with this game. And that podcast reiterated so much of it. It gave me life. Because I literally went back and I watched the 2012 Redskins because of what Mike McDaniel put in with the zone read, understanding that we have an option right now to freeze a linebacker by just putting the ball in his belly. Those things are the things that are the lost minute details that just aren't seen by everybody. And I'm not saying everybody needs to be hardcore, but it was just so good, man. It really was.
Well, it was, and the point about the Zorro concept that they run, you go back to 2021, that season when the 49ers, they had the offense just wasn't really clicking early. That Zorro concept is what saved them. That's when they're pulling the tight end or the fullback across the line of scrimmage to kick out, basically be like a puller, but they're already in motion.
And to real quick, Brad, so you can keep going. They asked McDaniel how many teams were running that when you were running it, and he said about 4 or 5. He goes, how many teams are running it now? He goes 22, 23 at least, and that's the innovation. Keep going. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it's like those are the little things that change the complexion of what we have seen with the 49ers. And again, you can point directly to 2021 and the explosion with that offense, and Deebo Samuel having success was because they had the league wasn't ready for Zorro, at least up until that point. And Kyle Shanahan started busting it out because he has George Kittle, because he has Kyle Juszczyk. That's why I always talk about Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle as being the absolute linchpins of this running game. It starts with those guys because they're constantly in motion. They're constantly going one way, cutting back the other way for misdirection, counters, all those different types of things. Now they're integrating more gap scheme because the zone read they've kind of figured it out a little bit. So they've had to kind of go and do some more gap scheme, which is not really what Kyle Shanahan and the Shanahan offense is known for. So he's got to cut against that grain. So from a scheme perspective, yeah, they're at the top of the upper echelon when it comes to understanding the game of football. And also in the related to quarterbacks, like what you said about Jared Goff. Jared Goff is a phenomenal thrower of the football. That's why he was the number 1 overall draft pick. I watched him for 4 years at Cal. He is a phenomenal thrower when he knows where to go with the football.
Yep.
But it's also why I always talk about play action being a learned skill. Anytime your eyes come off the defense to execute a play action, you are resetting the look of the defense. Because the second you take your eyes off safeties, linebackers, and you pop your eyes back up, you could have defensive linemen dropping out, linebackers coming. You could have safeties coming off the edge. What you see pre-snap, and then you take your eyes away, and then you bring them back, it could be completely different.
Yeah.
And that's like what you said, where Jared had a really hard time processing.
Yeah.
You look at Brock is phenomenal at that. He is phenomenal at selling play action. He's phenomenal at play action boots. He can do and execute play. You've seen the run pass options where it looks like it's supposed to be a pitch, but he takes that one step and he sidearms it to Christian McCaffrey, getting it right past the linebacker. you have to be able to that's a processing thing.
Yeah.
Like play action is a learned skill. You have to be able to have confidence. You have to be, and you have to do all of this within a 2.5 second window, or your head's getting blown off.
Yeah.
So those traits are hard to find in quarterbacks.
Yeah.
That's why Brock has had the level of success that he's had so far without having a Justin Herbert arm. Again, we keep going with these talking points about, well, he doesn't have this. Well, it's just like there's multiple ways to play quarterback. But
100%.
if you want to play quarterback for Kyle Shanahan in this type of scheme, you have to be a computer processor up here, and
100%.
he can live with normal arm strength. He
100%.
doesn't need the can. Does it help? Of course.
Yeah.
But he's proven time and time again that as long as you can process at a high level, quickly, fastly, ball out on time, accurate, that translates to success in his scheme.
For a quick example, real quick, because trust me, man, I've been watching the tape, writing it down. Like, so there's a concept that Shanahan ran in 2019 that everybody's running. I have examples with Coach Mike running it and McVay running it. It's the play action bang dig. So the bang dig, basically a dig route is like an over exaggerated in breaking route that's a little bit further out. Debo runs it to perfection.
It's like a comeback route.
100, yeah, a little bit. Like he's just over more to the middle of the field. Like he's just like you start upfield and you move a little bit to the field. It's paired with a comeback or a 9. All right. So the way that the Dolphins run it is they've got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. You've got two guys with elite speed. Okay. So you can run Jalen Waddle straight up with a 9, and he's going to take a corner and a safety with you. And you can run Tyreek Hill underneath with that because the corner is so far off, afraid that Tyreek Hill's about to blow past him, that you have to give him cushion. And once he puts his foot in the ground, you're too late. And if Tua is on time with the ball, boom, you got yourself a 20, 25-yard explosive play off of play action, by the way, right? Mm-hmm. When the 49ers ran it against Tampa Bay in week 1. And they ran it to perfection with Marquise Goodwin running the bang dig, but they paired it with a Richie James outside wheel route, which ended up being Jimmy Garoppolo's only touchdown in that game. And again, everybody sees it the same. You have to understand that I have a concept. I want to run this concept, but my personnel can dictate how I run this concept on you and the pressure it puts on you. When you have Waddle and Hill, you can do whatever you want. So, for example, they ran it against the 49ers, and they ran it with Waddle running the bang dig, but they ran Tyreek Hill on a comeback. Now, again, you're looking at Tyreek Hill as a corner, and you're saying, I cannot let him get behind me. So you step back, and what does Tyreek do? He runs as fast as he can straight to you. He puts his foot in the ground, and he's the second read in this progression. And once Tua looks and sees Dre Greenlaw sliding towards Jalen Waddle, he can put that thing right on Tyreek Hill and know that the ball's there because you don't have enough speed to stay with him. And if you are respecting the speed, then he can come back on the comeback and put it right on his chest. Like, those are the little nuances and details that I think are so beautiful. It's the same concept, but when you pair it with different routes based on your personnel, that's when you start to really find like the really explosive details. And that's why I really like, by the way Miami has put their defense together, by the way that they have their offensive, Tua is available and he's playing the whole year. I got Coach Mike winning Coach of the Year, and I've got Miami winning that division. As long as Tua plays every single game with that defense and the way that they're able to gain explosives with Coach Mike and understanding, like that running game can't be worse than it was last year because it was still bottom of the barrel. But when you're running RPOs, when you're running play action, you have that amount of speed. I have got Mike McDaniel winning Coach of the Year, but I've got the Bengals coming out of the AFC because I just really think it's Joey Burrow's year. But it's just all that little stuff. While watching the film, I'm like, that's the same concept, but they're running it in a different way because it's not Marquise Goodwin and Richie James. That's not the same sort of pressure that you put on a team. Like, Coach Mike went out there and said, I am going to get the fastest guys I can get on the outside, and I'm going to make you worry every single play about one of them. And how do you figure out a way to slow that down? That's just the subtle stuff that I learned from that podcast, and then going back and just like cross-referencing it with the actual film and looking through it.
Obviously, Mike McDaniel has his reputation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pull up Axel's thing. I know the answer. I'm sorry. I just got excited.
No,
I know
go
the
for it.
answer. It's a PA pop pass. It's called soda in Miami's thing. So pop soda, but it was the whole idea was once Tua pre recognizes the outside and he realizes that the corner has inside leverage, the pop pass is right there for Trent, and that's why he reaches back, he hands it back, and he looked, and Trent Sherfield was wide open. It's called PA pop play action in Shanahan's, but in Miami's they call it soda. I'm sorry.
What I was gonna say is like Mike McDaniel is a phenomenal coach. He has a reputation of being like this funny kind of whatever guy, like not too serious. But I really do think Mike McDaniel has the opportunity to become one of the best coaches in this league. And I don't think it'll take too long because of all the things that we've talked about with Kyle Shanahan, with the brilliance of the mind, and one of the things that I loved about Mike was that he made himself available for run game stuff. And again, when we saw the 49ers run game take off, as when he was the run game coordinator in 2021, or was he the OC in 21?
He was the OC in 21.
OC in 21. I was looking at McDaniel as getting the credit for watching how he was changing the run game, pulling Brunskill more, limiting Lakin pulling because Lakin wasn't a great puller. Brunskill was. And that's why we're seeing a ton of Zorro with Brunskill, then whether it was Kittle, whether it was Juszczyk, whether it was Jawan Jennings in that kind of split motion kind of role. I was looking at McDaniel. And the other thing is like McDaniel does have that other personality, I think, intangible that we've talked about with or at least I talk about with Kyle, that I'm like, we wonder, kind of it was kind of more solidified, with this podcast that he's Kyle. He's going to go about his business the way he's going to go about it.
He's Kyle, and all these guys are trying to be Kyle. That's what I got from this.
Yes, I agree. I agree 100% with that. Kyle's like the top of the tree, right?
Yeah.
With this new aged offense and scheme, I think McDaniel can put his spin on it, but he also has that kind of patience. Think of McDaniel. Think of how long it took him, and listening to his story, and like how much patience he had to have. Yep. He can have that same type of patience for younger players. I think Kyle is like, I need it now. I want it now. If you're not going to give it to me now, give me someone else who can.
Yeah. And I think
that's the difference in those two.
No, and I think Mike has a lot more perspective because of his struggles with alcoholism and the way that he talked about, like, I needed to beat all this stuff before I can get to those things. And let's not forget, when the 49ers run game was struggling, Mike McDaniel was the one running Zorro with Jeff Wilson at the fullback position and using him as a blocker and finding a way to get this running game going when Mostert was injured, with Elijah Mitchell as well too. I just implore people to listen to this. Again, I don't work for The Athletic, but Jordan Rodriguez did a great job. She literally had all these guys speak. You get like nice little nuggets about like Raheem Morris and all these guys being on the same staff in Washington and what they went through and how Kyle sees the game and how McVay is trying to like beat that every single year and how toxic it got in LA right after they won a Super Bowl and how bad things got last year and how McVay was just like this person who didn't even want to call plays anymore and didn't know how to deal with not winning. And all of these guys and the different temperaments, like all of them are trying to outdo each other, but they all have respect for each other. And I do think that there's a lot of, again, when people are like, well, why is Mike's offense having more explosive plays? Well, Tyreek and Waddle help. They help a lot, man. Like they really do. Like anybody having that sort of speed threatening you down the field, you would be able to do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can run bang dig, you can run dragons, you can run whatever it is that you want because these guys are menaces because you have to respect their speed. And that's the difference between everybody else. But when you listen to Kyle speak, Kyle wants to build around a defense. And going back to what I was talking about with the whole like running the ball 35 times, he goes, if I know my defense is doing this, this, and this, and we built it this way, then I don't need to like get into the explosives and I don't need to do that. I can wear you down and, for lack of a better term, I know it's a family show, beat the S out of you. Like he literally, that's how he wants to do things. So I again, man, I hope you guys, like, while you're waiting for football content, this is probably your best outlet. But I've had a blast listening to the little nuggets because I went back to watch 2012 and watch how they added in the zone read. And there was one really, really, really good nugget. This is really good. This is the last one I'll leave you with because I'm not trying to like blow the whole show up for you guys. Kyle married some of his concepts with what RG3 ran in Baylor and said, what's a play that will work? What's a play that that you want to install and you want to give me that we can run? And he gave him a concept. He said they ran it the first day. They ran it poorly. Kyle said, what the F is that? He yelled at everybody, whatever. They ran it again. They started to get to it. And Kyle walked up to RG3 and said, why do you think that I asked you to install this play? And he said, because it gets me comfortable. He goes, no. He goes, when I call a play, when I install a play, it's because I think I'm putting you in the best position to win, and I want you to know what that feels like. I thought that was super important to understand, that while people call people out on play calling, when people call people out on game planning, you have no idea the amount of detail and level that goes into it. And I thought that was really impressive. That was a big coaching moment because even RG3 said that made a light bulb go off in my head to understand that it's not easy and nobody can just walk in here and do it. And that's why you may have success for a few games, but you may not have the answer when they have the answer. That's the best thing.
I agreed. No, that was a big brain. It was a big brain move on Channy. Like, and it was a long play because he gave RG3 the opportunity to install the play, practice the play, and of course, to your point, RG3 didn't want to fail and flop on his play, so he made sure it was going to be successful.
Yep.
And Channy just flipped it, and he's like, "This is what I do every single time I install a play. I expect that when I install a play, you have the same energy. We are trying to install this play because we believe in it and we think it will work. We want you to have that same level of buy-in." And that's when RG3 was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, you got me." That's a phenomenal coaching by Kyle Shanahan. Again, being able to get guys to buy in different ways. I thought that was absolutely phenomenal. And yes, it's a great podcast. I still need to finish it, but what I got through was pretty darn good. I've been sitting on this one, Gammon. I promised you to get to it. You asked a couple questions, so I figured it'd be a good one for the end. I'll let you take number one. He says, agree that Shohei Ohtani would look good in black and orange.
Don't do this to yourself. Don't do this to yourself again. Giants fans, don't do this to yourself again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I don't follow baseball very closely, but after what happened
don't
earlier,
do this. Yeah, don't do this to yourself again. Have we not learned about Arson Judge? Have we not learned about, like, come on? All right. Second question.
Hypothetical question: time travel is possible. Which 49er event would you to visit?
Easy for me. This one is super easy for me. The 1994 NFC Championship game, San Francisco 49ers against the Dallas Cowboys. Deion Sanders on the other side for the San Francisco 49ers, finally getting over the hump that I wouldn't even want to go to the Super Bowl because I knew, even as a young man or a young child, 11 years old, that the San Diego Chargers had no chance in the Super Bowl. And I was about to watch my team roll. It's that game that I would love to be at because I dislike the Dallas Cowboys so much. And that was the moment that I realized, oh my God, I am going to watch my team win a championship. And to this day, unfortunately, 49er fans, that is the last championship the 49ers have had. So
no, that's absolutely a phenomenal answer. Honestly, if I had to go back and pick, just watching the whole catch situation play out and Candlestick and everything leading up to it.
Birth of a dynasty.
Right, the birth of a dynasty. It kind of reminded me how I felt when the 49ers beat the Saints in that divisional round playoff game to like be like, "Oh, wow, we could stand up to a team when it came through a high level passing game like because we were like, "Oh, if we go up against an elite quarterback, we're done." And it was just like it was one of those moments of just being so crappy for so long that I would imagine it would be like that feeling times 10
Yeah.
of you're on the cusp. Like I think when the Warriors finally got good, how good those first seasons felt because they were so bad for so long
Hmm.
and you weren't used to it at that point. It was all still brand new and that brand new feeling of being like, wow, this feels bigger than the actual moment. Like we
For
know
sure.
in real time this moment is bigger than just a regular game. So I feel like putting myself in Candlestick for that particular game and that particular play, and that the way everything went down, um, just when you talk about pandemonium, and the famous call, like
Yeah.
that just feels like one of those moments
Brad,
where everyone just lost it.
did we just come together and hate on Dallas together?
We did at the same
I
time,
I love it.
unintentional.
I'm so happy. I'm so
Yeah.
happy. They deserve it. They deserve it.
And number 3, what are your 2023 goals? And he says, "Thank you for your time." What do you got?
Um, 2023 goals: being a better person. Being a good father to my daughter. That's it. That's all I really care about at this point. I mean, and just enjoying football. That's it.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I'm being the best person that I can be, and that's all that really matters at this point. Football is the stuff that we get to talk about, but I don't get to talk about that if I'm not, moving in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say goals for 2023 is just try to be better than we were the day before. Try
Yeah,
to get better every day. Try
yeah.
to keep winning the day. And hopefully, I mean, it's not a personal goal, but gosh, I want to see this 49er team win a Super Bowl.
I mean,
That's really what I
look,
want. Like,
look.
can I live vicariously through them and put my goals onto their shoulders and
I
it be
mean,
our goal together? Does that work?
I'm putting my mental health in the hands of a team that that does clearly not care about any of that. So it's a risky proposition. So
It's very
I focus on the things I can control. So what are my goals? I can only control being a better person, being a better father to Averly, making sure that I'm putting my best foot forward. What I would love to see is a 49ers Super Bowl and perhaps a day where 49ers Twitter does not rip itself apart every
yeah.
single day. That's all.
Could you imagine? I don't know. I think the world would heal at that point.
I think it's at this point it's kind of a unattainable goal. Um I mean,
The damage is
even
done.
even
People
when
are
the
arguing just
49ers
to argue at this point. Like,
dude, even when the 49ers won how many straight games, people were killing each other about like, "Oh, I need Jimmy back." Like, it's just like, man, it's just okay, man. I get it.
that's why you gotta stay off Twitter a little bit. Twitter, all social media for that matter,
I've
which is
been, I've
hard
been,
considering
I've
we
been.
do a lot
No,
of our
I've
work
been.
on social media.
Nah, I've been. It's so good. Honestly, I touch grass. Did you know what grass feels like? It's incredible,
I
man.
felt it the other day and I was like, "I forgot what
Oh,
this feels like."
like touching grass and then smelling it is insane because I never knew what it felt like or what it smelled like, and I've done that this entire summer, man. Can't believe it. Unbelievable.
But this was actually a fun conversation. We talked a little bit about training camp, but we talked a lot about X's and O's, and I like that part of it. Like we kind of get
Always.
deep into the brain of the Kyle Shanahan trust and the entire tree
Stop playing
uh,
with my coach. That's what I
that
wanted you to
has.
walk away from in this. Stop playing with my coach. Stop talking crazy because there's not many guys that you want to replace him with. Need I remind you, Chip Kelly, Jim Tomsula, there's not replacements out there. I don't want to hear it. Not Ken Dorsey, not anybody. So, like, stop playing. Like, just get mad, okay? But don't say things you can't take back. Do not play with my coach like that.
No coach is perfect. Every
Nope.
coach has a flaw. Every coach has something that they wish they could have back or do something differently. Hindsight being what it is, it's fine. It is fine. And I'm very happy that
All
Kyle
right,
Shanahan is leading this team headed
Brad.
into this season.
Brad,
Yes,
Vincent wants to know. We got to do the state of the franchise best ball, right?
Vincent.
SoCal Niner fan. What's up with the fantasy shows? Any upcoming draft shows? We gotta
Yeah,
we gotta do state of the franchise best ball, right? Like where we
yeah,
do the draft and we just talk through
mhm,
it and everything as well too.
yep. Of
Okay.
course,
Well, it's got to be
got to
before
get the
training
people
camp.
ready
Got to be before training camp.
before training camp.
Yes. So maybe this week.
Best ball draft before training camp. It's
Yeah.
all goes all the way throughout the season.
Yeah. So basically, what best ball is again, guys, you draft your favorite player. You play them, and the best players that you have that score, you don't set a lineup all year. So, for instance, a best ball player that you would love to have, and this is just off the top of my head, is like someone like Deshaun Jackson, right? You don't know what week he's going to pop off, but when he does, he wins
He
you
might
your
pop
week,
off for 1 week,
and
right?
he'll win you the week. So there's no waivers, there's no lineups. You literally just go through the draft. Yeah, I think we should set that up for this week. Promo code Aponte on Underdog Fantasy, by the way, and that's probably where we'll be holding it as well too. Make sure that you use that promo code so you can double your first deposit up to $100. By the way,
Stay tuned. State of the franchise best ball.
best ball.
See if you can take down the Jason Aponte. We'll see. But that was a fun conversation. Football is here. Rookies report tomorrow. Then from that, week away, training camp, veterans report. And as you saw today, if you got your tickets, first day of open training camp practice is on the 26th. And we will be off and away talking about real football, Jason. Real football.
Yes,
Not
actual
hypothetical football.
football.
Not just opinions. Like we get to talk about what they do and
Actual football.
provide analysis. And I'm looking forward to it. And of course, looking forward to seeing you. All that good stuff coming
We're going
up.
to Yard House?
We're going to Yard House right away. It better be the first stop. Or else I'm gonna
better be the first stop. You already know.
Disappointed in all of us if we don't go to Yard House.
Brad gets that big pretzel, if I'm not mistaken.
Bro, that big pretzel, fire. You got a big pretzel with some beer cheese? Sign me up. I'm dipping that thing all the way through. Let's go.
I love it. I'm so excited, man. It's good to see you again, man. And this is how you know football's coming back. We're back on and we're moving and everything. So yeah, make sure you guys like this video on both channels, subscribe to both channels as well too. We got you guys covered. Yeah, man, I'm excited. Football games are back and we get to talk about actual football, and then we can cut each other's heads off about what we think about actual football as opposed to
yeah, then we'll argue about that. But anyways, always a blast. Shout out to everyone tapping in for State of the Franchise. Make sure you subbed to both channels, like both videos. We really appreciate y'all. And shout out the Spicy Squad. We're out of here for now until best ball time. And of course, 49ers training camp coming up. Appreciate y'all. We're out of here. Peace. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now.